Hey there, chat. I'm back on that Pokemon kick. Last time I went through some key locations up through the first half of the Galar region. Well, this time with Madeline, I'm looking at the Pokemon. Madeline's interest in fairies and mythical creatures lends well to a Pokemon game. She wants to learn all there is to know about how to bargain and deal with the Fae, and use their magic to strengthen her own power as well. So obviously with Pokemon, her focus would be not just on her team, but also on the Pokemon of the region and how they all function, not just with the environment, but their temperaments and attitudes. Let's look into that, as well as some mythical interpretations. So starting on her Pokemon journey, Madeline grew up in Hammerlock before coming to Wedgehurst to obtain her first Pokemon, Sobble. Sobble is the water lizard Pokemon of Galar, and it fits Madeline in a number of ways, aside from just being a water type. That's because Sobble is also a sniper. Think along the lines of James Bond and other secret agent types. It has a hidden ability that says, when this Pokemon's attack lands a critical hit, the attack is powered up even further. The Pokedex for Sobble even says, it gets berries to eat by shooting them down with bullets of water it spurts from its mouth. Its aim is perfect. This makes me think of the archerfish. Although it's a tropical creature, the archerfish shows the same habit of hiding in the water just below the surface and using bullets of water from its mouth to shoot down prey. And wouldn't you also know it, but Madeline does have some considerable skill in archery as well. Of course, it also says, when scared, this Pokemon cries. Its tears pack the chemical punch of 100 onions, and attackers won't be able to resist weeping. Let's talk about the obvious thing here really quick. 100 onions? The chemical in onions that causes humans to cry is called synpropanthenyl S-oxide. This is a highly volatile compound comprised of sulfur. When you cut an onion, you break open its cells, releasing alanase enzymes that react with sulfur-containing amino acids called sulfoxides to form sulfenic acids. These sulfenic acids rearrange in synpropanthenyl S-oxide, which quickly evaporates and wafts up into your eyes, where it reacts with the moisture to form a mild sulfuric acid, causing the stinging and the tears. While it's not really easy to measure since it forms instantly after cutting, an estimate would suggest a rough total of 30 to 75 milligrams per onion that generates 0.2 to 0.5 milligrams of SPSO per gram of fresh tissue. Multiply that by 100 and you get an absurdly high concentration of 3,000 milligrams to 7,500 milligrams of SPSO. The potential side effects of such exposure would include immediate, intense eye irritation, potentially causing chemical conjunctivitis. It's similar to the effects of disease known as pink eye. Severe tearing, involuntary eye closure, and intense pain. But not limited to the eyes, someone might also experience respiratory distress if inhaled due to the irritation of mucous membranes, nausea, coughing, and temporary blindness. In an enclosed space, it might resemble exposure to a weakened form of tear gas. But some Pokedex entries are absolutely absurd. Come on, a snail that's hotter than the surface of a sun but somehow fits in the pocket of a 10-year-old? That being said, the obvious answer is to make sure Sobble stays relatively happy, right? Well, that's where I think an empathetic person like Madeline would really benefit from this little creature. It's basically an adorable biochemical weapon with abandonment issues. In a world where mice can shoot lightning bolts and lizards can melt boulders, maybe it works just the same? Or is this Pokemon power creep a thing even in lore? Sobble's design is based on the veiled chameleon. Although it's not native to the British Isles or the UK, this animal can change its skin color due to factors like aggression, social status, reproduction, and stress. The special crest of the veiled chameleon is also used to collect dew or rainwater, and plays the role of channeling that to its mouth for hydration. The Chilean tree iguana is also known as the crying lizard due to its distressed calls, and certain horned lizards will cry a foul-smelling blood as a defense mechanism. All of these elements fit into Sobble's design. Well, after meeting Martin and Shane, Madeline would travel back to Postwick with them where Shane obtained Wooloo. But that's not all. During this time is when Martin and Madeline wandered off into the slumbering world. Madeline had already heard that it was a place relating to one of her all-time favorite myths, the Darkest Day. But what was the Darkest Day, and how does it relate to real-world mythology? Well, let me explain. 3,000 years prior to the events of Pokemon Sword and Shield, a powerful legendary Pokemon named Eternatus awakened from its 17,000-year slumber and created a huge black storm in the skies of the Galar region, causing many Pokemon all over the region to grow gigantic and go berserk, destroying everything in their path. By present day, the true story of the Darkest Day had been forgotten, and various alternate versions of the story arose. One about a single young hero defeating all gigantic Pokémon with their sword and shield, honored by a golden statue in the hall of the Bud Dewdrop Inn, which depicts them as a tall armored man wielding a sword and shield. Another about two youths managing to stop the Darkest Day with the use of a sword and shield, being crowned as kings as a result. Retold in 4 tapestries in the Hammerlock Vault, which depict them as a dark-haired youth wearing blue and a blonde youth wearing red. The truth of the story is that these two youths were aided by the might of 2 legendary Pokémon, the warrior Pokémon Zamazenta and Zacian. Following the defeat of Eternatus, Zamazenta and Zacian were both badly injured, much like King Arthur after his battle with Mordred. And just like King Arthur, they chose a misty, magical forest to rest and recover from their wounds. The Slumbering World is a comparison to Avalon, possibly Tirn and Oak. And now, the mythology of the Galar region is undoubtedly based on Arthurian myth, which is why it makes its way so well into our story. Martin and Madeline's interest in King Arthur's story is a perfect mirror to an interest in the stories of the Darkest Day. Given that, it seems extremely reasonable to say that Zacian is based on Excalibur, and Zamazenta on Arthur's shield, called Weinbergwarthacher. And if you ask me how many times I had to practice that word, we'll be here for the next 3,000 years. Wolves have also been an important animal in Great Britain heraldry, as it was a symbol of notable families during the Middle Ages, and it is possible that the disappearance of Zamazenta and Zacian might have been a nod to the sad fact that wolves in Great Britain have all gone extinct. Zamazenta specifically also mirrors the Iron Wolf of Lithuanian mythology that acted as a dream omen for Grand Duke Gediminius of Lithuania, circa 1275 to 1341, around the same time as our heroes' lives. The Duke asked his priest to interpret a dream, and he said, "What is destined for the ruler and state of Lithuania is thus. The Iron Wolf represents a castle and a city, which will be established by you on this site. This city will be the capital of Lithuanian lands, and the dwelling of their rulers, and the glory of their deeds shall echo throughout the world." It makes sense then that Hammerlock, the biggest city in Galar, now sits in the exact spot where Eternatus was originally defeated by the two youths. Given this, it's likely that Zamazenta, the sword-wielding counterpart, is based on Fenrir of Norse mythology. Fenrir in Norse mythology is one of the children of Loki. Fenrir grew up in the halls of Asgard at an alarming rate, and only the god of law and honor, Tyr, was brave enough to approach him. There was no way they could keep Fenrir in Asgard, since prophecy dictated that one day he would break free and devour Odin, the leader of the Aesir. And so a chain was constructed of impossible materials like the footfall of a cat, the breath of a fish, and so on. This chain, called Gleipnir, could only be placed on Fenrir when Tyr put his hand into the wolf's mouth in order to bait him. Enraged that he could not break the chains, Fenrir devoured Tyr's hand, but was dragged away to a lonely and desolate place where he was chained to a boulder. A sword was placed in Fenrir's mouth to hold open his jaws, causing him to howl endlessly until a foamy river flowed from his massive maw. The two wolves may also be based on the Capitoline wolf, a she-wolf responsible for finding the twins Romulus and Remus, abandoned in the Tiber River. Speaking of which, did you know that scientists recently have found a way to bring back the dire wolf from extinction? 2 dire wolves bearing the names of these early Roman rulers were recently revealed. Maybe the return of these wolves will be a sign the darkest days will soon be defeated, or else we're well on our way to creating Jurassic Park in the middle of a capitalist hellscape. Comment down below, which prehistoric animal should they bring back next? Eternatus being a huge poison dragon, as well as roughly serpentine, could be a reference to Jormungandr, the giant serpent child of Loki that was thrown into the sea by the Aesir, and coils around the entire world. This would fit in with the Norse aspects of Galar, but for the Arthurian theme, Eternatus could reference Ulthar Pendragon, Arthur's father, who we already know was a toxic snake. But also Ulthar is said to have witnessed a dragon-shaped comet falling to Earth. Related to that, some point out that Eternatus bears a resemblance to the seven-headed dragon in biblical Book of Revelations. Arthurian myth does have a heavy Christian lens, and this dragon has similar themes to Eternatus, such as falling stars and powerful giants called Nephilim. Hold up, I thought Andrew said he was part Nephilim. Never mind. There was something else in the slumbering world with Madeline and Martin that day, aside from the mists and fog It was a strangely familiar Bolton. Madeline recognized him immediately, but something was off. The Bolton she'd grown up with had been considerably older the last time she saw him, but her father promised her he'd sent him to a farm to rest with a flock of Wooloo. With a spare Pokeball in her bag, Madeline decided to try and coax the familiar Bolton to her, but then something changed. This wasn't a Bolton at all, but a Greavard. Okay, I know, I cheated with this one. Greavard isn't even available until Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which released in November of 2022, and Sword and Shield came out in November of 2019. But hear me out. In the Ride of the Puka, it's revealed that Madeline had a dog while she lived in England. This dog passed away, but came to visit her from beyond at the time when the veil was thinnest. The Slumbering Weald represents that spot where the mysticism of the Galar region is most prominent. And there's already the premise of Pokemon as ghosts since the very first game, and supernatural entities other than Pokemon also exist throughout different storylines, such as the ghosts of actual people. And while some might argue that Pokemon ghosts don't necessarily become a new type of Pokemon, such as the Lavender Tower in Generation 1, please suspend disbelief with me to appreciate the reference back to our original series. I hope you go watch it if this is your first video. I'll put the playlist in the end card, so watch till the end, or skip it if you can't wait. You might appreciate the references to these side projects a lot more with the series canon in mind. So Bolton is a dog Pokemon that evolves from Yamper. They're both pure electric type, but Greavard is a pure ghost type. Yamper is based on a Corgi, which was a very popular breed of dog for a particular British monarch. Bolton is based generally on sighthounds. These are dog breeds that hunt primarily by sight and speed instead of scent and endurance. Dogs like foxhounds, greyhounds, lurchers, and long dogs. Since Bolton is the natural enemy of the Pokemon Thievul, it makes sense to think of its sighthound origins. Greavard is based on herding dogs, particularly ones like the Commodore, Briard, but especially the Iberian Catalan sheepdog. Its shaggy white coat and glowing candle also resembles the Santa Campana, or Holy Company. This myth tells of a midnight procession led by a living person followed by the souls of the dead. Although these souls aren't often seen, the smell of burning wax always accompanies their presence. The leader of this procession is cursed to lead the Campana without any knowledge of what happened. They will eventually grow pale and die, joining the Campana unless they can find someone out at night to pass the curse to. The Santa Campana shares parallel myths with things like the pan-European concept of the Wild Hunt, the Welsh Hounds of Anwen, Irish Banshees, and the Breton Anko. Given all that, I don't see any harm in including it in this crossover. After leaving the Slumbering Weald, the trio traveled to Lake Milok, where Martin and Shane capture Tyrogue, and Martin and Madeline capture Ralts. But why Ralts? Ralts was introduced in the Hoenn region, but it also appears in the Galar region. I included them because of the parallel forms of Gardevoir and Gallade, their final forms, and split the final evolutions between Martin and Madeline. Gardevoir and Gallade, simply put, invoke chivalric romance, empathetic magical women, knights, and handsome heroes. For Ralts to Gardevoir, think the maiden becomes a queen trope, and for Gallade it's the boy becomes a knight tale. Now honestly, I could be here all day listing off Pokemon and the minute detail that goes into making each one, but if I did that, this video would be an hour long, and that's just not necessary. But I'll also go ahead and list off some Pokemon prominently based on specifically British, Scottish, and Celtic myth. So I've already covered the legend Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus. In the last video with Shane, we went over the Impotent Blind, Hatena, and Grookey. A handful of Pokemon from previous generations were also given special forms in Galar to relate them closer to the myths of the region, such as Ponyta and Rapidash, who traded in their fiery manes for pastel locks and a psychic typing. Their horns are longer and bigger to relate them closer to unicorns. Unicorns are all over British myth and are even considered the national animal of Scotland. Yamask is another Pokemon given this treatment. Originally, Yamask related more to Egyptian myths, but in Galar the Pokemon carries a special rune and evolves into Runerigus. Runerigus, like Stonejourner, relates to the standing stones and giant boulders carved with runes. Romans, Celts, Anglo-Saxons, Normans, and of course in Norse mythology. Odin famously was hung upside down from the World Tree while he learned the secret of these runes, and his demise in this position is what turned him into the god he became known as. Most of these kinds of stones can be found in Scandinavia, and the English runestones are a group of about 30, which refer to the Viking Age voyages in England. They constitute one of the largest groups of runestones that mention voyages to other countries, comparable only to the 30 Greece runestones and the 26 Ingvar stones. The red dragon shape on Runerigus might refer to the dragons on the Welsh flag or the dragon Fafnir. In the Crown Tundra, we're introduced to a Pokemon called Spectrarier. While there's a number of supernatural horses in England and Celtic folklore, from the Kelpie to Odin's Sleipnir, another one of Loki's kids like Fenrir and Jormungandr, Spectrarier is definitely based on the puka, which means our trio might just encounter it at some point. Speaking of which, let's also mention Spectrarier's writer, Calyrex, the High King Pokemon. This refers to a story involving the puka, in which the High King of Ireland was able to successfully tame and ride the puka using 3 hairs of its tail. Calyrex also resembles a rabbit, which was the preferred form of fairy women visiting the mortal realm, and its head looks like a crown of thistle, the floral emblem of Scotland. Also, and this one's a stretch, right below the constellation of Orion is Lepus the Hare, and both of which are located in the night sky near the Horsehead Nebula, as a point back to Spectrarier and its unicorn counterpart, Glastrier. Glastrier is based on the Nikur, a water horse that is white in color and sounds like the crackling of a frozen lake. Alternatively, there's a Hengroin, King Arthur's horse, or Leath Macha, owned by Cuchulainn. Cramorant is based on the Cormorant. In Ireland, it was considered bad luck to see a cormorant perched on a church steeple. And in Liverpool, there's a legend of the Liverbird. This legend dates back to 1911, when the Liver Building was built to display 2 liverbirds atop massive domes near the top of the building. According to popular legend, they were a male and female pair, a female looking out at sea, watching for seamen to return safely home, and a male looking into the city, watching over the seamen's families, or making sure the pubs are still open, as a jocular version has it. Local legend also holds that the birds face away from each other, for if they were to mate and fly away, the city would cease to exist. Another popular story told about them is that they are chained down, for if they were to fly away, the River Mersey would burst its banks and flood the city of Liverpool. This is somewhat similar to their mating story. An all-female rock group in Liverpool called the Liverbirds was actually active in the 60s. They moved to Hamburg in 1964, where they were billed as the Female Beatles. This points back to the prominent references to British rock and the music scene, the same as Galaran Zigzagoon, Lynoon, and Obstagoon, as a reference to the UK punk rocker scene, along with Toxicity, which comes in amped form to resemble electric guitars and a low-key form to represent the bass. Orbeetle, the final evolution of the Blipbug line, may very well be based on an English nursery rhyme called Ladybird. Ladybird is the British name for a ladybug. I mentioned Thievel before, but its pre-evolved form Nickit comes from the British slang to nick or steal. But foxes as thieves and tricksters has been a prominent part of British folklore featured in the Morale Fabulous. This is where the trope of the Reynardian fox comes from. The Reynardian fox is a literary cycle of medieval allegorical tables. The stories are largely concerned with an anthropomorphic fox called Reynard, who deceives other anthropomorphic animals for his own gain. Reynard was written to be a parody of medieval chivalric romance, and so he fits well in the Galar region. This entry in the Pokemon series brought in a number of new Dragon-type Pokemon, and dragons have always been big in Middle Ages and folkloric tales. In DDD are based on butlers and maids respectively to their gender roles, and I've gone at length about how the influence of British colonization on Japanese culture with maid outfits in the video on Isekai Anime, if you'd like a more detailed rundown on that. Moripiko references Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde characters, written by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson. Sinistea and Poltergeist are based on British tea culture, something they share in common with Japanese culture as well. Though it should be noted that British tea culture didn't become popular until the 1660s by the royal class, and the 1840s to late 1800s for the general populace. Living in the 1300s, Madeline's family actually wouldn't have been avid tea drinkers. Roly-Poly, Carcoal, and Colossal are based on coal mines and industrialization, and Dreadnought references the Dreadnought, a type of 20th century battleship that was made by putting metal over wooden hulls of previously used ships and powering their engines with steam. After catching Esper with Shane outside of Motostoke, Madeline was greeted by a sudden surprise. A lone Noibat had appeared in the grass nearby, but due to the green coloration, she had almost missed it entirely. This is significant since Noibats are usually purple in color, meaning this off-color Noibat was exceptionally rare. The Noibat was very tired already, and rather than battle it outright, Madeline welcomed it to their camp and helped it regain strength. After this, Noibat joined Madeline's team as well. Different colored animals can happen for a variety of reasons, In Celtic folklore, an odd white stag may be a symbol, or a golden eagle may be seen as a sign from the other world. In Scotland, in 2011, a bright blue lobster was caught. According to the BBC, the probability of this happening is something like 1 in 2 million. So using this as a for instance where we can see these off-color shiny Pokémon are indeed exceptionally rare. And while not exclusively native to Galar, Noibat is based on bats and the wyvern, a prominent figure in Welsh and Anglo-Saxon mythology. A wyvern is featured prominently on the Welsh battle flag known as Idraig Awr, the Golden Dragon. Hey Bree, did you know golden dragons were specifically Welsh? Anyway, I gotta go guys. Bree is dragging me out of my hole to make sure I don't become a shut-in again. Stay safe and keep reaching out to others. Art for this week was by Coconut on Fiverr. I'll put a link to their business down in the description, and I'll see you all again next week. Patreon is our main hub for all things involved with Tales of Atonement, and our patron support helps us produce our episodes faster and with more consistency. But what's in it for you? From there you can find our Tales of Atonement Discord server, art, music, comics, as well as exclusive viewership for upcoming scripts. Supporting us on Patreon is what shows us we're part of a growing community of artists, actors, history buffs, and storytellers that have become fascinated with our characters these past couple of years. This is our passion project we've put our hearts and souls into over 20 years, and your support really helps keep that flame alive. Right now, a big thanks to Pammy Poo, Heinrich28, Shadow Fox, Charles Tam, Arya Gamari, Jace Morland, and Lunder Lumen. And of course, everyone who joins us each week. At the very least, I hope you'll like this video, subscribe, and ring my bell if it really resonated with you. And I'll see you again next week. Many a mickle, Maximukle.